Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about the different levels of prepper food storage. But before we get started, if this is your first time by the channel, welcome, and if you've been by here before, welcome back. If you don't mind, go ahead and hitting that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. That would be awesome. And also, if you stay tuned through the end of the video, I would like to talk to you guys about a new way that you can help support the channel. We have merch now, but I'll save that to the end so that you guys that are just here for the information, you don't have to put up with that. So when I say levels of prepper food storage, what I really mean by that is organizing your food in such a way that you reduce wasting, the stuff that will go bad quicker, and you avoid dipping into your long-term food storage until you actually need to use it. So you want to organize stuff basically from what has the lowest shelf life all the way to the stuff that can last decades without going bad. Throughout this video, I will mention shelf life, and what I mean by that is either the use by date or best by dates on the food's packaging. And if you're unfamiliar with those two things, basically a use by date is going to be the more concrete of the two. You don't want to really use that food much more than a day or two beyond that date, just because it's bad and it can make you sick. And really, whether or not it gets a day or 2 days or 3 days past that point just depends on what it is. And then a best by date, you have a little bit more wiggle room there. Sometimes you can eat stuff past its best by date months or maybe even years past that date in the case of some canned goods. The first level of food storage that we're going to talk about, I refer to as level 0. And the reason why is it's not something that you should really consider to be food storage necessarily, but if there's an emergency, you don't exactly want to forget about it either, just because you can still use it for a short period of time. And that's going to be your perishable items. And a good example of that would be anything that you keep in a refrigerator or a freezer. You want to use that stuff, as much of it as you can, for as long as you can, before it goes bad. And if you have a generator, that is going to be a great use of that equipment to keep your food fresh for a longer period of time. And if you have the option, go ahead and put the stuff that's in your refrigerator, anything you don't want to lose, like meats, things like that, into like your separate freezer, like if you have a box freezer or a deep freeze. And the reason why is food in a refrigerator will only stay good for about 4 hours when the power's out, but food in a deep freeze, especially one that is full, can stay good for much longer. So if you have your generator hooked up to that deep freeze, then you can power that and it'll keep your food frozen. If you have to shut the generator down for a little while, it'll at least keep for longer so that you can start the generator up again a little bit later, and that'll help your fuel last longer. And in addition to things like meat and dairy that you would keep refrigerated or frozen, you can also lump fresh fruits and veggies into this category along with bread, because a lot of those things you're only going to be able to keep out on your counter for maybe a week or so until they go bad. Now I know that some fruits have a much longer shelf life than that, but just kind of speaking about the things that don't last as long, you want to eat those pretty much as quickly as possible. And if there's any way that you can, try to preserve those. If you have the means to like dry, cure, and smoke meat or even can, then go ahead and do that, and that'll help you use that food for a longer period of time so that it doesn't spoil. Now, the next level of food storage that we're going to talk about, this is what I consider to be level 1 food storage, and that's going to be kind of just what you would consider just regular non-perishables, but not anything that has too great of a shelf life. Stuff like Ritz crackers, saltine crackers, and then even stuff like ramen. Things that have a shelf life of a few months, maybe to a year or a little bit more. These are things that maybe you do want to stock up on. Just be sure that you rotate through them, and then they are good supplements for your perishable food storage, especially in the early stages of a disaster or an emergency. Just like I said, be sure that you rotate through these because they might only have a shelf life for a few months to maybe like just over a year. The next level of prepper food storage is going to be what I call level 2 storage, and we're kind of getting into what most preppers would consider to be actual food that they would want to store for long term, and that is canned goods. We're talking about things like canned vegetables, canned fruits, chili, soup, and then even different types of canned meats. And these are going to have a shelf life of at least a year, all the way to 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of those things that will probably be safe to eat for a longer period of time past their expiration date. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to be going by the date on the can for now. And what's good about storing canned goods is that you will be able to use them as either just standalone meals or to supplement other types of food storage that you have. Say you have Mountain House and you have lasagna and you want some corn or something to go with that. Well, you got canned goods to help you back that up, and they're pretty cheap and easy to store. Level 3 food storage is going to what I consider to be things that you could put in Mylar, seal them up, put oxygen absorbers in there, and they can keep for 10 or more years. And some examples of these types of things are going to be dried pasta, flour, sugar, rice, dried beans, and then also even though it isn't a dried good, raw and unfiltered honey lasts basically forever. And one thing I want to mention is that if you store white flour, you might not get more than about 5 years out of that before it becomes rancid, but that is still, of course, something that you can seal up in Mylar, store, and get more shelf life out of it than what you normally would. Level 4 food storage is going to be freeze-dried meals, and these are things like Mountain House, Ready Wise, Augason Farms. And the good thing about freeze-dried food is it'll last between 25 to 30 years, maybe more depending on the manufacturer. For individual meals, I really like Mountain House. I've talked about them in some other videos because I actually like the food. I've eaten it. The lasagna pretty much tastes like a frozen Stouffer's lasagna that you could go pick up in the freezer section. It's really good stuff. So I like Mountain House for just individual meals or entrees, if you will. And then also there's companies that have individual ingredients. I know Mountain House has like diced beef, diced chicken. I think they have ground beef. And then Augason Farms, they have a lot of just plain ingredients, things like eggs, cheese, just big cans of corn, I think. But there's other brands that have those as well. But I really like freeze-dried food kind of as a backbone of a long-term food storage plan. And the reason why is you can set that stuff in your closet or the back of your pantry and forget it's there until you need it. And the same is true for the food that you keep in like the Mylar bags and the buckets. Those things are going to be more stuff that you don't think about just eating while you're grazing or you just haven't been able to go to the grocery store. But things like canned goods, your just regular non-perishables like your crackers and stuff, you might have a stockpile of those, but all it takes is a couple of weeks of not picking those things up at the grocery store and you don't really have a stockpile of those things anymore. But with the stuff in the buckets and the freeze-dried food, that's not something that you're going to be dipping into a whole lot. And if you do, it's going to be probably more on the front of your mind to go ahead and replace those things if you use them like during like a short-term emergency or if you use them camping or something like that. And level 5 of a prepper's food storage plan should be ways to renew their sources of food as time goes on, especially in a long-term emergency. So maybe this isn't necessarily storage, so I'm kind of cheating here, but it is an important part of a prepper's overall food plan. And part of that is going to be foraging. Know what plants in your area are edible or can be used for medicinal purposes, and know where to find those, what parts of the plants that you can use, and how to do that safely. And one great way to do that is to go ahead and pick up some sort of edible plants guide, or even better than that would be to find somebody in your area that's knowledgeable over that and do like a foraging class with them. Also, another good way to renew your food storage over time is to start a garden. And if you are going to depend on this for like your primary source of vegetables and fruits, then you're going to need a pretty substantial size garden. I did a video over seed banks that I'll link to. I think it's on this side. But gardening's a good way to have control over what you eat, have a renewable source of food, and there's a lot of those things that if you have the equipment that you can preserve through means like canning. Also, you should consider things like hunting, know what animals are in your area, how they behave, and then also have the equipment that you need to harvest those animals. If hunting is going to be a big part of your emergency food plan, then you need to consider that maybe larger animals, things like deer, elk, moose, whatever you have in your area, those are likely to be hunted to the very near brink of extinction fairly quickly after there's a long-term emergency. People start running out of food. Folks are going to go out, and those larger animals are probably going to be at the front of their brain. So maybe consider hunting smaller animals, things like squirrels, and also learning how to trap. That's a great way to capture smaller animals and then get food from them. Learn how to set up snare wires, have some just specific animal traps that you can use. And then also fishing. If you live near any sort of body of water that has fish in it, get the equipment that you need to do that. Learn how to fish, learn how to clean and gut them, and that goes for any animals that you hunt or trap also. And also learn how to preserve that meat long term if at all possible. Once again, thank you guys for stopping by. I'm glad you can make it. I do appreciate y'all staying to the end. If you haven't done so already, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button and the notification bell, that would be awesome. All right, so let's talk about merch. You might see at the bottom of the screen this shirt. It has the DIY Prepper TV logo on the front, and don't panic, just prep. You can check that shirt out in the link below, and if you guys buy a shirt, I get a cut of that, and that helps support the channel. And I really appreciate any support that you guys are willing to give. And, you know, even if you can't buy a shirt, you know, always likes, helpful comments, those are always appreciated as well. So thank you guys again for stopping by. I hope y'all have a good one. I hope to see y'all back. Thanks again.